Hey everybody, it's Anna and welcome back to my booktube channel. I have at last returned from my board game convention in Canada where I had so very much fun. I am going to be wrapping up all of the games that I played there in a separate video because at the end of the weekend I realized that I had played 16 distinct games in 3 days, and that was just way too much to try and cram into a single Geekly Wrap-Up. So without further ado, this video is going to be the books that I read, not the games that I played. You'll have to wait for a separate convention wrap-up video for that, from September 29th through October 6th. The first book that I finished was actually from a book box that I decided to try out this month. So it's a mystery book and it was called 1,000 Reads Home by Carmel Harrington. This book I didn't realize featured an autistic main character until I started reading it, so that was pretty cool. Although I do not think that the author is writing own voices, I thought that this was a really good representation regardless. And it is the story about this woman named Ruth and her son DJ who get evicted from their apartment in Ireland and put up in this emergency temporary housing in a hotel while they're waiting to be given a council house, I guess it's called. I guess in Ireland there must be some kind of like public assistance program for people who would not normally be able to afford a house to get a house. And then they reconnect with somebody from Ruth's past named Tom. He's a doctor. That is the doctor that actually delivers her baby. And they realize that he is now living on the streets, sleeping outdoors kind of thing, because he has fallen into a pretty deep depression after the death of his wife and baby son. It kind of causes him to just not be able to function as a doctor and work and live indoors anymore. So they reconnect, are able to like rekindle their friendship and work together to try and make a difference for people experiencing homelessness in their community. And this was a really interesting story because I don't think I've read books about main characters who are experiencing homelessness ever before. I can only think of like one other book that takes place in contemporary times off the top of my head. I can't remember it, but it's a YA book about a homeless teenager living in Seattle. I can't remember what the title of that book is. I think it has the word winter in it. So this is a demographic that is not often represented in literature, so I was very intrigued by that. This story was very sweet. It was very heartwarming. The ending did kind of tie everything up just a little bit too neatly with a nice bow, which is why I ultimately gave this 4 out of 5 stars, because I know it's kind of designed to be a little bit of a fairy tale with a happy ending, but the ending of it did seem pretty unrealistic. But I really, really did enjoy this book. I think if you are looking for a book, especially if you're doing the disability readathon, this has autistic rep and mental illness and depression rep. And yeah, really enjoyable. I had a great time with it. Then I finished my final book that I had been reading for Space Opera September, which is Midnight Robber by Nalo Hopkinson. I talked about this book already on my channel, but basically it is about Tantan, who is a girl that goes with her father to this sort of off-world planet dimension called New Halfway Tree after her father gets exiled from their community for killing somebody in a fight over a woman. And then Tantan gradually realizes that her father is actually a really dangerous person for her to be around, so she has to kind of run away from home, and she lives among all of these strange animal spirits that exist in this pocket dimension universe where essentially prisoners go, and she finds new life and meaning through taking on the persona of the Robber Queen, which is a carnival character. And yeah, she is finally able to create a life for herself after adopting this persona. This is a really good book. It did take me forever to read, I think partially because I was just exhausted by the end of September. It is written in a Caribbean patois, so that was also something that took a little bit getting used to because I am not used to reading books that are like that. So obviously you can still understand it if you can read English, but it is a little bit unusual if you're not used to hearing patois being spoken. Yeah, this book was pretty amazing. It does come with some trigger warnings for sexual assault, rape, and incest, so be aware of that if you are going to go into it. But yeah, I would definitely recommend this book. It is a lot about the power of stories and donning masks and character personas and how that can actually help us gain better understanding into who we actually are and where we come from and help us make our own stories. So I really enjoyed that. Then I read my second book by Moira Fowley Doyle, Spellbook of the Lost and Found. This was actually unintentionally the first book, I guess, that I read for a disability readathon, because I didn't realize until I started it that the main character is deaf. She wears a hearing aid. She's also bisexual, so there's queer and disabled rep in this book, which was a very pleasant surprise. I don't know why that wasn't marketed at all as part of the book. For some reason, I feel like publishers are just now getting the memo that, like, if you market a book as queer, us queer folks will just start throwing money at you because that's how badly we want to read queer stories. But anyway, that's not what happened. So this is a story about a couple of girls that cast a spell that starts making people lose things. At first, it starts out like small, insignificant things, like everyone thinks that they lost their keys at a party or something like that. But then it gradually becomes that people are losing more important things, like their minds or, you know, their independence and freedom and stuff like that. So there is this creepy old spell book that the other kids in the town are trying to get a hold of so that they can try and redo the spell so that everything that is lost and found can be returned to its rightful owners. I did not like this quite as much as I liked the Accident Season, but it was still very good. It still does deal with themes of like rape and sexual assault. This one is like coercion specifically, so be aware of that going into the book if that is something that you are sensitive to. I am, but I kind of figured that given how the Accident Season went, Moira Fowley Doyle is going to be dealing with a lot of these type of topics in her books, so it was okay going into it. But yeah, very good book. Would highly recommend all of her stuff because it's like very spooky, magical realism, maybe? I don't know if I would call it magical realism because I don't tend to like magical realism very much, but I really liked this. So maybe I actually do like magical realism all along. All right, and then I have two more books that I read for the Disability Readathon. Both of these I actually read on the way to Canada for the convention and then in my hotel room once we got there. And those are Haben, the Deafblind Woman Who Conquered Harvard Law, a memoir by Haben Girma, and Strangers Assume My Girlfriend is My Nurse, which is a collection of humorous essays by Shane Burkhall. So both of these books were to fulfill reading a memoir for the Disability Readathon. Haben's also fulfills reading a book by a person of color, and both of these are books featuring a physical disability. I thought that they were both incredibly amazing. Haben's I gave 5 out of 5 stars because I just loved the way that she wrote about disability and also included in her writings about disability things about the ableist structures that are in society that we all sort of live with and have to contend with, and specifically what it's like for her as a deafblind person navigating her way through life and those ableist structures. I really also enjoyed, the book nerd in me really enjoyed hearing about one of her biggest legal cases that she's had to work on since she graduated from law school at Harvard, and that was actually about civil rights for folks with disabilities versus Scribd, which is the like ebook, it's not an ebook publisher, but ebook distributor, I guess. I know a lot of folks on BookTube get their ebooks off of Scribd. I personally have never used it, but basically this case that she worked on, the court ruled that because the Americans with Disabilities Act requires public places to be accessible to disabled people, that public places needed to be expanded to include services on the internet because the internet is a public forum. It's where a lot of our lives take place and happen and stuff like that. So it made Scribd have to comply with accessibility standards so that disabled people could more easily access all of their ebooks. So I thought that that was pretty amazing, and her writing was really great. Shane's book was really good too. I had read his first book, Laughing at My Nightmare, I think earlier this year or late last year. I can't remember which. This one definitely has it's still funny, but it has a less comedic tone overall, and some of the essays actually do deal with some more serious topics, especially as like it pertains to the disability rights and visibility discussions writ large, just in the sense that, yes, all of his essays are about that, because he's disabled and he writes a lot about disability rights, but these ones were a little bit more like disability rights in the news as opposed to how it intersects with his life personally. And I really enjoyed it. I did think that like it was kind of short, and I think maybe that some of the essays could have been organized a little bit better in terms of narrative flow, so I gave that one 4 out of 5. The essays themselves were good, but the way that they were organized in a collection I thought could have been a little bit stronger. So anyway, that is going to do it for the 5 books that I read this week. I will be coming back hopefully either later this week or early next week with a combination vlog and Geekly Wrap-Up of the board games that I've played. I won't be able to hold up all of them because a bunch of them I checked out from the board games library, or we demoed games that aren't even out yet, so we got to just play them with the game designers. That was really cool. It was super amazing. I can't wait to tell you all about that. But in the meantime, if you have read any of these books, please do let me know down below. I'd love to hear if you also have any spooky book recommendations, because it's now October 8th as I'm filming this video, and I have blown through about half of the spooky books that I was planning to have last for the entire month. This is what happens when you take a really long car trip at the beginning of the month. So yeah, if you have recommendations, please leave them down below in the comments. As always, thank you all so much for watching. Please subscribe to my channel if you haven't done so already, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!